Welcome everybody. In this video we're going to take a look at vite and Vue with an AspNetCore API backend, right? So we're going to take a look at how to set up a project for development, and then we're going to see how it's going to run in production. So I'm going to use VS Code. A lot of people who code in JavaScript use VS Code. If I would be doing this in my environment, I would be using Writer, right? Let's go ahead and get started, right? So I'll just create a source folder just because we're going to have a release or production or dist folder where we're going to publish our application. The SRC folder is just going to be the thing that is going to hold our AspNetCore backend and the vite Vue application. So let's go ahead, open up the terminal. We'll cd into the SRC, and let's just start with the easy thing. Let's create the .NET application. Creating the vite Vue project is pretty easy as well. So .NET new web type template with the name of let's say vite API, right? Give that a couple of seconds and do should be there, right? So there's our project, super simple with the whatever OmniSharp. I don't need the decompilation. With the default, hit any route and you end up with the hello world response from the backend. It's pretty standard. Next thing that we want to do, I can't remember this command, so what we're going to do is go to the getting started page of vite and grab it from here, right? So npm init vite latest. So go ahead, just paste it into your SRC folder. I'm going to do a couple of things, like pull things down, what I want to call it. Let's just call it vite client, or the client to the API. We'll take Vue. I'll take Vue without TypeScript. I tried the TypeScript template and actually pretty cool, works pretty well. Let's go ahead and run them together, see what we need to connect one to the other one and what things we can do. Let's go ahead, cd into the vite API here, and we'll just do .NET watch run. We'll add another window here. We'll just cd into SRC, and I'll cd into vite client here, and I remember what the actual script was, so let's take a look at package.json dev, right? npm run dev. So you actually need to npm install before you run npm dev. So that took about 7 seconds. Compared to what I've used to see on the npm install, this was nothing, right? This was like a walk in the park. So anyway, npm run dev. And yeah, okay, server's up. The .NET app is up at 5,000. We're here at 3,000, right? So I'm just going to switch to HTTP because HTTPS requires an additional setup with the make cert tool where you create your certificate authority. You generate some certificates for your front end, for your JavaScript application, and then it just works, right? Let's duplicate this, and we'll just run the 3,000 here and see what's up, right? So, pretty standard application. The hello world API, that's fine. We're going to change it in a second. So if you're not familiar with vite and you've landed on this video and you want to know what is vite, and vite, as people or the creator Avenue explains it, it's French for fast, right? And as you've seen, the setup so far has been pretty fast, and that's the reason I'm trying it out now and why I want to kind of see how it's going to perform with .NET Core. So let's go ahead and see what it's all about. app.vue, we'll just, I don't know, put like a paragraph in here. If I remember how to write HTML in VS Code, I'll just do hello world, and there we go. So like instant update. And to be honest, so far this isn't all that special, right? The more special thing that really happens is when you run a Vue through .NET Core, right? So when you serve this app through port 5000 using some JavaScript extension services, and vite being still as fast as it is right now. So that will be the exciting thing. Maybe you don't want to run your Vue application through the AspNetCore application, and I'm just going to show you what needs to be done in order to have it working. So let's put this on one side, and I'm just going to do this in the hello world component. I'm going to basically add some state. I'm going to fetch something from the backend and display some of that text on screen. For this, I'm just going to use the fetch API, so I'll just do fetch. We're going to do something like localhost 5000. We'll do test, and that'll be good. So then we're going to get a response. This is not a Java Lambda. We just want to get the text. Yeah, that's going to return a promise if I remember correctly. And yeah, that's going to give us back a text. We can add some more state. We'll just call it message. All right. We'll start with empty. We already have a prop like that, so let's just be a little bit more verbose. State dot message equals text. So the t parameter here is what's returned from the text promise. I think Vitejs works with streams, so it needs to like buffer as it's reading things. I don't know exactly how Vitejs works, but yeah, there we go. So let's copy this. Let's display a state dot message, right? And to start with, it's empty because we don't have the test route. We are not gonna get any response from it. Basically, it's gonna crash. It's gonna return a 404. I think that's what here. I think you're gonna see some mask errors, but yeah, and also we get a course issue. So first, let's go ahead and implement this test controller and return some data from it. Pretty standard stuff in terms of AspNetCore. Just gonna make this bigger a little bit. Hide that thing. Instead of endpoints, we're just going to map default controller route. Don't need more than that. And for this in the services, we're going to need to add controllers. I have a couple of videos explaining dependency injection and middleware. Basically, services, this is your class with a function. The function does something. You register the class here, and then that class is available in the middleware. Middleware is what handles the request that you make to the server, right? And the handling of the request is just to produce the result, right? So that's just if you're not familiar with AspNetCore. So we've added the controller. Let's go ahead and add the controller folder, controllers, and the joy of working in VS Code. I don't know, maybe there are templates, but let's go ahead and create our test controller, right? And our namespace. So what's our namespace? There we go. Class, right? Oh my god, haven't done this in a while. Test controller. Let's see, it needs to be public, and we need to inherit from controller base. So let's just do controller. I'm not trying to be extremely correct here. Okay, and now that we have here, we can do action result test. Let's say because it's test controller, we can just return index. Yeah, and this can return okay with maybe a little bit of a, I don't know, let's say test result. Okay, so we're just gonna return something from the test controller. So if we just go ahead and hit /test, it will obviously not detect the change because the file didn't exist before. So let's write .NET watch run again. So it detects this file and it knows it needs to watch it. Let's refresh this, and there we go. We have our test result. If we refresh the application, remember we're still getting the course error. So this is the point number one. If you want to develop your V application separate to your AspNetCore application, but you still want them to talk to each other, you need to solve this course issue, and it's generally really easy. Put it in this in development block. You will just do use course. You can specify your policy here, or you can use a builder to build it right here. I'm gonna do that because I think it's a little bit less verbose. So really easy thing. Allow any header, allow any method, and allow any origin. And that should pretty much do it. So now if we go ahead and refresh this, we get the test result as the result, right? So now our applications are talking. We're able to receive data from the from the API. We display it on our client. Let's take it a little bit further. We're currently working on two different IP addresses. In reality, once you deploy it, they will more or less be on the same domain. They might differ in routes, or you might be on a different subdomain, right? But on the main domain. So it depends on how you want to spin it. Maybe you want them on separate domains. I'm just going to show you things that you can do. Let's say you want them separate. This is as far as you need to go. You want them on the same domain. Let's see what we need to do. So I had another window open here. This is a package that is really made for development with SPAs on AspNetCore. So this is just an extension. It will basically either proxy your request to the dev server during your development, or it will go ahead and try to serve you the static application that you've developed, right? So in the end, you take your SPA, you compile it to some JavaScript, and you just want to serve those static files, right? So let's go ahead and grab this command line here, paste it to the API, and I mean, we're just going to go ahead and add the latest version, right? All the bleeding edge with all the cool boys. Yeah, there we go. SPA services extension. So what does this give us? This gives us a very convenient use SPA option in the middleware. This will take a builder, maybe a configurer. You can always find out by pressing F12, iSPA builder. So it's an interface of a builder. On this builder, you will have a use proxy to SPA development server, and this will have the URI to the development server. So we're going to be basically proxying all the requests to our Vite application here. So let's grab the URL and let's just pass it as a string to this function, right? And the proxy development server is for development. So what you would do is you would grab this in development block of code and use it here, right? So we want to turn this off. We want to turn this proxy off once we're in production, right? I'm going to show you by the end how to actually publish it to production, right? So let's go ahead and run this again. Cool. So that's there. So now what we can actually do, let's comment out the course because we don't really need it anymore. Let's save that. And now if we do go to test, we still get the response of the API because we're hitting a controller endpoint. If we are just going to hit the root, we're just going to get the normal Vite application, right? So there it is. We no longer need the 3000. We are still getting the test result, right? So now you don't need to deal with course because you're on the same domain and only the routing separates your API and your front end. And for this to really work well, I'd say prefix all your controller routes with /API. So you know you're not going to get collision between your client and your API. If you're hosting it as two separate applications, let's say your Vite applications once built goes in the bucket and your AspNetCore application will go in a Docker container. They will be living on essentially two different addresses, but you still want to serve them from the same domain. Then you're going to be using either some kind of load balancer or a reverse proxy that's just going to make sure that you have your domain, and I mean, it's going to do essentially the same thing. It might be a little bit more efficient than this setup, than AspNetCore serving you files, or it might not be. Actually not aware. So anyway, if you want to see that live setup where we actually deploy it to somewhere and use a reverse proxy to serve it, leave a comment. Moving on, we are serving our Vuejs application from our AspNetCore port, right? So again, we're on the same thing. Without beating a dead horse or whatever the saying is, let's go ahead and see how it performs, right? So Vite documentation, let's say lol. It's a little bit hard to see, but there it is, right? So save, and there we go. So I would say 2-3 seconds update through the through the AspNet API. So I'd say it was definitely a lot faster than the previous version. So without Vite, basically very slow, or at least I would say 5-6 seconds. Right now it's quite fast, so definitely going to be using that, right? Anyway, not advertising Vite. I actually like Vue and all its ecosystem. I'm just letting you know that this actually now exists and it's quite easy to set it all up. So next step, you're going to go to production. So what are you going to have? You're probably going to have a pipeline. You will need to arrange it all together. What do you need to do to have it production ready? So let's stop both of these. What's going to happen? At the moment, Vite is a development server and a bundler. So it basically serves your files in development. And once you want to go to production, it will actually, the code that you've written, it will bundle it. So what that means is it's going to pick out all the things that you use and that you don't use. It's going to throw things away that you don't use, keep the things that you use, put them in nicely optimized into JavaScript. That's what it's going to do. You are going to end up with some JavaScript files. .NET Core application is going to get compiled and try to serve those static files. To take it to production, we need to do a little bit more configuration around our middleware and the extension that we have brought in. So first of all, we need to specify where are those files going to live. In services, you will find an extension, add spa static files. In here, you're going to see a config builder. In this config builder, you will find a root path. I'm just going to call this dist, and that is essentially where where our spa static files live. Don't worry about using the environment and making it aligned with the content root path of your application. Internally, this already does that. Okay, so you don't need to worry about that. So you don't need to do path combine now and on the environment get the content root path, right? Don't do any of that. Just specify the string relative to your project. Okay, so for us, it's just going to be dist. The last bit here is app use static files, and that's it, right? So minimal setup, really. I mean, I don't have much to say. I'm just showing you what needs to happen. So we're ready to serve our application, right? We actually need to build it. So again, package.json, which script actually builds it, right? This is npm run build. This will build. Let's come back to the .NET side. .NET is publish C with configuration release, and it's publish instead of publish. Kulich. Anyway, right? So we're here, and in publish folder. So this is basically our AspNetCore API. In the dist folder over here is our AspNet, what's called our vite bundled view application. What I'm gonna do now is what you put in your build pipeline, right? So nothing too crazy. We're gonna create a folder and we're gonna call it production, call it release. You can go crazy with it. And what you're gonna do is in the script that you write for your release pipeline is you're going to move files from one directory into another, and then you're going to take this dist folder and you're also going to put it here. Okay, might seem complicated. I think it's maybe 2 lines of bash script. I'd have to Google how to write. I'm joking. mv/ whatever path, you know, and just put it on GitHub, and there you go. So now you're essentially what you're doing, what Vite does, but you're doing it for 2 separate applications. Just taking files and you're bundling it into a single application, right? You've got this set up here. Let's go ahead into production folder. We can check all the files here, right? This is what you put in your Docker container. So you need a command to run, or you can put it in the service file. So if you just put this folder onto a Linux server, you can put this folder into Docker container. You just need to go ahead and .NET and run it against this DLL, right? And there you go. Now let's go ahead and hit this, the great white screen. So let's see. Failed to load module JavaScript expected JavaScript files. So what are we actually loading? Preview. Okay, so looks like I'm just loading the HTML. Okay, so it's not able to find the static files. Let's come back to the application and let's take a look at the static files. So these are really the 2 things that we register for serving the static files. First is the add spa static files directory. So this will be correlating to this dist directory. Next thing is we kind of need to tell, okay, we registered this thing to look at this directory. We kind of need to use it. We use it here to return it. So use static files is not the same as use spa static files. So make sure you get that right. Don't do what I did just there. Let's stop this server. Let's come back to our folder here. We're just gonna rebuild the what's called the AspNetCore application. While it's happening, I'm gonna delete things from the production folder, just the AspNetCore application. I'm gonna leave the dist folder, which is the vite bundled application. I'm gonna come back to publish, and again, I'm just gonna copy these files. I'm gonna go into production. I'm gonna put them here. Again, I'm gonna come back to this command line. and rerun vite.dll. Come back here, close this. Voila, voila, le baguette, right? So there's your application. It's working. It's calling the API. All is good in the world, right? So fresh. There's the test call response. Cool, right? And that is all I really wanted to show. Now getting the next step to production, just as I said, if you can look up a Docker container tutorial, or if you want me to make one, put a comment below. If we want to host these two separately and first proxy sort of point to these two locations and sort of tie it together like that, you can go look up a tutorial for that, right? Just look for reverse proxy. Your Vue app goes into the bucket, your AspNetCore still goes into a Docker container, or maybe a dedicated thing that runs AspNetCore applications, although they could be quite expensive, I think. Or, you know, ask me in the comments, and maybe if there's enough interest, I will also make a tutorial on that. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. As always, any questions, leave them in the comments, join the Discord server, and have a good day.